Welcome, everybody, to another episode of SoulFull Sessions. I would like to welcome Frank Daly to the show. He is one of the Mindful Men guests. It's a limited series that I am doing where I have a number of men come on the show. We're going to be talking about all sorts of different spiritual topics, as well as who knows? We're just going to let it flow and see where we go. And I'm super excited to have Frank on the show. Before I officially introduce him, let me tell you a little bit about Frank. He is a wellness coach, a public speaker, and author who has transformed lives for over 15 years with his ability to enable his clients to see beyond the immediate drama of life and connect to the greater whole, which is fantastic. Frank's recent publication, Enjoy the Ride, which is available on Amazon, by the way, provides a simple and straightforward explanation of how to use our inner guidance system to reach goals and live a more choice-driven life of joy. And I don't know who would not want a life of joy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So as everyone knows, or maybe you don't know, I always mention a little bit of like astrology in here. So, and Frank is going to be hearing this for the first time now on the show. Frank, you are a Leo sun, an Aquarius moon, and a Cancer rising. And I'm going to share a smidge about each one of those with you and the audience now, just for their edification as well, if they happen to be one or any of those. Leo sun, so that means it's a fire sign. It's your personality. It's how you present yourself in the world. It's how people see you, how they view you. Aquarius moon. Aquarius is an air sign. So again, these are both masculine signs. So you've got a lot of masculine energy. Your moon, though, is your inner world. It's how you relate to yourself emotionally speaking. It's the relationship with your mother. So Aquarius is very heady. It's very like thinking and analyzing. And Cancer rising. Cancer is a water sign. It's a feminine sign. And that's what you are rising into in this lifetime, aspiring to tune more into that feminine side of yourself, have a deeper understanding of your emotional nature, a little bit different than the emotional nature of the moon. It's more, the symbol of Cancer is a sea crab. So like that hard outer layer and the soft inside, that shell around you, especially when you've got all that masculine with your sun and moon. So, in this lifetime, you're looking to explore that softer, deeper side and maybe soften that outer shell just a little. So I'll get your thoughts on that in just a second. I also want to share a quote, something Frank is known for saying: "The only true weakness you have is believing you are weak." I think that's super powerful in its simplicity. That's something you can seriously ponder. And just a smidge more about Frank. Frank writes articles for several publications, including Eden and Awareness magazines, and conducts meditation workshops weekly. And if you're looking to get more information about Frank or attend one of his workshops, I'm not sure how they're going now with the current state of the nation and the world, but he's located in Phoenix, Arizona. He lives with his son Tristan and is currently writing a work of fiction called Strong Island. And one thing I forgot to ask you, Frank, is where can people find you and your writings? I know you may have shared that with me before, and I apologize for not having that handy this second.
The writings, as far as
like anything you share, when people wanted to look you up online, where are they going to find you?
I have an Instagram page. I'm not like a huge social media person, but I'm starting to do that. Obviously now because of what's going on.
Okay.
So as far as also to add into, as far as the weekly meditations, I'm actually doing it on Zoom as well. So if you just send me your email to my email, which is fdaly1967@gmail, and then I can invite you into the 7:00 meditation every Wednesday. So
awesome. And what is your Instagram handle? If anyone wants
it's Frank Daly.
Frank, okay.
Yeah,
easy.
it's just simple. Yeah.
That's
keeping
simple.
it simple. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So people could also direct message you there if they wanted to participate in the meditation, I would assume.
Correct. Yeah. Because if they go out there, they'll see me on social media if they look me up, and they can connect to me somehow, some way. But the email is a way to do it. So
Perfect. Yeah. So all of this information will be in the show notes so everyone can easily access it. I'm going to start with your thoughts briefly on the astrological aspects that I share with you, and then I'm going to jump into my official opening question of the show. So how did that feel to you with the way I described those different aspects of you?
Yeah, I felt that from a young child. I was always very physical and aggressive, but yet there was a side of me that disallowed me from stopping to hurt somebody else. And what I mean is I played in certain sports. And one of the sports I was raised in was boxing. But I always had the inability, which didn't make me a really good boxer, was to actually hurt another human being. But yet I had the capacity to do so. So there was this kind of like duality in me, and I was saying which side should I take? But the side that said do not hurt someone was always winning, but yet I was still stuck in the social understanding that men are supposed to be strong and take care of things. But it wasn't probably to my early 20s or whatever I started realizing no, it's not the path I want to go down. Yet I still have that appearance or whatever, but that's not what leads me anymore.
Yeah.
It's part of me, so I accept it. I don't try to deny it. I don't do that. But it's part of me, but it's not controlling me. So yeah, it's interesting to hear from that perspective because I've never heard that. But again, every perspective just gets me deeper into the understanding of what this world is about and who I am.
Yeah.
And
I think what we're all looking for, a deeper understanding of who we are, not just the physicality of us, but that deeper, more soul-filled aspect. And I want to just touch on briefly something you said, and that is, I'm trying to think back to what your exact words were when you were talking about, really having that duality within ourselves. And I think, and accepting it, that's a big thing. I talk about this a lot, is radical acceptance of where you are, who you are, what is happening. We do have the light and dark sides of ourselves, and pushing away the dark is not necessarily helpful. It's embracing it, understanding it's a part of us, and then making different choices in the moments when we would typically go down what would be considered, a quote unquote bad path or wrong path. There are no bad or wrong. It's just how we perceive it. It's how we navigate it. It's how we have a deeper understanding of why it's there, because it's likely something that needs to be healed or something that needs a little bit more attention or love or nurturing. And so really just accepting all of the aspects of us. So I think that's really powerful in the fact that you have a recognition of that within yourself and weren't pushing it away and embraced it as part of who you are.
Yeah, because when you embrace it or accept it, you learn then how to incorporate it. You don't need to put it in a prison, because in the physical world, which all of the universe is made of light. But if it wasn't for darkness or lack of light, however you want to put it, or shadows, there would be no contrast. And with no contrast, you wouldn't be able to see anything. You'd be blinded by the light. So in this physical world, there is contrast. If too much darkness comes in, you can't see anything. Too much light, you're blinded. So how do you play the game like a camera does with an aperture? Mm-hmm. It learns to flutter and let enough light in so the exposure of the photo is identifiable based on what you want to see. We have the light inside of us, and how we think about something is like the aperture. It actually creates it. Then we'll actually experience it in the physical world. And then we look at it and say, oh, okay, I like that. Next time I'm going to expand upon here. And then life's journey begins. So that duality in there is we're starting to learn how to incorporate it, not separate them.
Yeah.
Before we were trying to, when you're trying to separate something, trying to separate the dark from the light, you become darker. When you don't accept it, when you hide it, you become worse off. Because there is a natural tendency in life is about incorporating, cooperation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's true. I mean, I think that's why we have such a high rate of depression and anxiety and things like that, because people are constantly doing that, like, pushing it all away, shoving it down, looking to cover it up, and instead of really digging in and asking some serious questions. And
Yeah.
not to make light of those who really, who have chemical imbalances and other things going on. I'm kind of just talking about, the generic, if you will, low level sense of anxiety and stress that most of us walk around with on a day-to-day basis. So,
Yeah.
okay, so opening question for you, Frank. Can you tell me and the listeners about a recent experience you might have had, and if maybe not even so super recent, about a time when you just knew it was your soul talking to you?
All right. I could do as recent as this COVID-19
Okay.
situation. Life is going along. And, it's like prior to this, even people in the spiritual awakening practices and stuff would talk about certain things, of dealing with certain things. Like, okay, when someone yells at me, I'm going to deal with that. And these are everyday occurrences in the way we've been experiencing life. Although I really wouldn't put them as every day. And then one day we woke up and we realized there was a COVID-19. And however you look at it, it literally stopped the world and made you look. So at that moment, all these things I've been practicing for many years, from the first time in which I woke up, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
I had to put them to work, because it wasn't like, oh, just a little thing. It was, everything's changed from this moment on. And people are saying, oh, I'm waiting to get back to normal. I'm like, there is no getting back to normal, because once you know something, you can't unknow it. So it's a new norm, if you want to say there, a new perspective. So when this happened, at first you're like, whoa, what's going on? But then you go back to the practices I've been practicing, and now you realize, wow, this is why I've been practicing. Like, I even remind people, I'm like, think about all the technology was out there, and I'm just going to throw a number out there just to kind of make a dramatic story about it. We were only utilizing 10% of it to fulfill our day. When COVID hit, we were using 90% of it, and guess what? It was already there waiting.
Right.
Everything that we want is already here. But sometimes it was like, I don't need that. In this moment in time, all the practices I've been practicing, it's like, how a boxer will punch a bag. Well, now you're in the ring with an opponent. It's different than hitting a bag.
Yeah.
But yet, okay, keep focused. What did I do with the bag? And this is what's happening. So to me, this is a really beautiful moment. I know people are really scared and having this fun, but personally for me, it was because those practices actually work. They're not just hearsay. I can talk about something. Well, how do you know if it works? Well, the only truth there is experience. Well, a lot of people are having that experience. Some people having different experiences, and their truths are valid as well. I wouldn't take it away from them. But as we learn to accept what's going on, I see a lot of people that wouldn't choose this, but are finding joy within it. Whether it's they're not working as much, they're not rushing around. Me personally, the same thing. There's certain things, like I would have never chose to take off 6 weeks of work, what I call work, but I did, and I enjoyed it immensely, because it was a different mindset. So then when I went back to work, I maintained that mindset. I wasn't going back to prison if I looked at work as that way, which I didn't, but there was another level of looking at my work as a career or something else. So it changed the way I look. And life is always going to be expanding. And this was kind of like a leap expansion, like a quantum leap in expansion, compared to a lot of other things. There was another quantum leap over 30 years ago, but then 30 years later, bam, this hits. It's like, oh, interesting.
And this is a biggie. I mean, this is definitely
It is.
a biggie. So for you, really, it's the COVID-19 life experience for you, in your mind, was your soul talking to you, kind of giving you that nod of, yeah, you are on the right path. You are doing the right things. The practices that you have been cultivating over the past, years are now here, showing you're spot on. You're exactly where you need to be. So it was
Yeah.
maybe a sense of comfort and
Oh yeah.
like, okay, cool.
It's like I'm home.
Yeah.
no matter what, it's like when a storm is hitting, when you actually find yourself in the eye of a storm, from a meteorologist standpoint, that's the calmest place to be.
Right.
So when this happened, I was easily able to find myself in the eye because I directed myself towards it rather than on the peripheral where all the moving and swinging around of the wind and what have you is. Where I spent, most of my life on in that part. And what I was trying to do is stop the storm. I'm like, no, just make it to the eye. And then the storm becomes this magnificent thing. It's like swirling around. And then part of my life's journey is to get people to understand they too can be the eye of the storm, because at the same time, they are the storm. So if you are the storm, you can also be the eye. So, and that's my life's journey, but I do it in a kind way because I once was in that place to know that you can get there. How others get there, it's going to be different than the way I did, but it's possible.
Sure.
It's fully possible. So.
Well, and I think it's cool. I like the analogy that you used about the storm and the center of the storm. So, in a lot of spiritual circles and, yogis and meditators and everyone in that sort of realm of understanding, you talk about centering yourself, going back to center, tuning into center. And for people who maybe aren't familiar with that language, that analogy might give them a sense of a place to rest their mind, for their mind to go to, for a better and deeper understanding. And that's one of the reasons I invited you on the show, Frank, is because when we have had conversations in the past, you and I are meeting at the same place, but we're coming from different directions. I'm coming from one angle and you're coming from another. And I think it's really valuable to show people that there are different pathways to get to the same destination. I mean, if I were, traveling to Phoenix to see you from South Florida, I don't know what the highways are. I'm going to make up stuff. I could take, I-19 straight across, or I could take I-17 with a little jaunt to 29, go this, you can go in different routes to get to the same place. And I think it's really, really awesome for people who maybe are a little bit more logic minded, who don't necessarily subscribe to all of the woo and all of the, things that I talk about quite a lot, using cards and other things, where it's really just a different perspective on reaching the same place. And so I'm really excited as we have this conversation today to share your perspective with people so that they can have another alternate route to get to what their center is and their sense of peace when there is chaos swirling all around them.
Yeah, and I think that you nailed it when you said that, because if there's 7 billion people on the planet, there's 7 billion perspectives of the center. Now, if you look at the center as one unified area where there's calmness, or the collective consciousness is, look at it as almost like a wheel, like a bicycle wheel. You got a hub, and every single spoke moves from the rim down to it, all creating the stability for the wheel. But they're all meeting at the same place, which is called the hub, but yet they're holding a different position on the wheel. And if you look at life in the collective consciousness of humans, we're actually supporting a wheel. And you think about energy, all energy is spheric. It's a globe. Energy seems to be round, all planets around, and it swirls around. So there is a center point that we're all going to, but so is our inner being. So if I'm a spoke here and you're a spoke here, we're all supporting the wheel. Where people get mixed up is like, I want to be that spoke. I'm like, no, your spoke is very well needed. I'm like, your path will make it to the hub. They all do. It's the comparison of another spoke, so to speak, or another person is where people get mixed up. They think they're on the wrong path. I'm like, no, you're going from the rim to the hub, or the hub to the rim, to really be exact, because you start here and create the outside physical world.
Sure.
There isn't a right or wrong way to do it other than thinking so.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back to the quote about my, being weak. It's like, there really isn't any such thing. Just thinking you are actually, if you think you are, the physics will actually give you an experience of being weak. But that's how powerful you are empirically, because it takes a powerful being to actually pretend they're weak.
Well, and I think that right there is the crux of where people get lost. And that is they can't fathom the thought. They can't even entertain the thought that they're powerful, that they can create a life of their dreams, to be able to, and I'm not talking about like having material things. I'm talking about having that sense of fulfillment and peace and joy in each moment, not
Yeah.
allowing all of the things outside of us to trip us up, to make us feel like we're off balance or we're going down the wrong path. And comparison is huge, comparison, competition. That's a big one. And I think this period of time is showing us that comparison and competition, there's no room for it. There's no space for it. There's no need for it.
It's become,
It's really about your own personal inner journey and what lights you up, what brings you joy, what is your true path, which has absolutely nothing to do with all of these outside forces and people around you, even though we think that it does.
Exactly. And also another way of looking at it is, if these things weren't going around outside of us, where would your contrast be laid? And so when you start looking at the world around us, we see a lot of, obviously COVID, there's a lot of fear, but out of fear came collaboration, because it came respect for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember hearing something early in, probably back in April, that said they estimated about 4 billion people stayed at home or close to home. Like, that's cooperation. If there's 7 billion people on the planet, and we assume the other 3 billion were, just going from work to home. So that's complete cooperation. So there is this collective conscious cooperation going on. But we don't know, like, I know that I don't know what's going to happen, but the state of energy I'm in will then, if I'm in a joyful place, the day will then be experienced joyful. But I don't know who's going to enter into my life, what's going to happen. But that's the fun of it. Just like the child doesn't know on their birthday or Christmas, whatever holiday, you open up a gift because it's wrapped up. But there's a knowing that I'm going to enjoy it. Now, when we start to really contemplate that, we realize that we're all the same in that way. But if I don't know, how do I know enough to criticize someone for doing what they're doing? I don't know. So if someone's freaking out and throwing a brick through a window, yes, I know it's destructive. Yes, I know it gets nowhere. But that might be their path to realize this isn't working.
Sure.
I don't condone it from the act of that doesn't work. But at the same time, I don't harshly judge it, because that might be their path to realize this isn't really working. What will work? Collaboration. Is throwing a brick through a window collaboration? Well, no, but I'm frustrated. So now people have my attention. Yes, they do, but is it the attention you want? So that can be a part of awakening, because there's been a lot of historical people over time that have done bad by society and woke up and did good. And then because of that contrast, they had a little more validation in it, because they've been there, and say, that doesn't work, I've been there. It's kind of like somebody that was in a gang that gets out of a gang has a better job trying to coax people out of a gang than I do, because I've never been in a gang in that form.
Right.
So and that's kind of why it's like one big movie going on, and every character is needed until it's not. But who am I to say we're done with that character? We don't need that. No. When it's done, it will exit stage left.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. But just knowing that is what keeps me calm. Because if I had you shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that, all of a sudden I'm not doing what I should be doing, which is remaining calm.
Well, and I think it does, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It does speak to the experience piece of it, where we learn from our own personal experience. You and I can share our stories for the next 10 hours, 10 days, 10 years, but it really is not going to resonate or make a difference in someone's life until they go, oh, wow, okay, I had a similar experience, and maybe have a different perspective on that similar experience, or have, it needs to be in your field. And we also don't know where other people are. I don't think any of us here, at least this is my opinion, have any room to judge anyone else or their choices or their decisions, because we don't know where they are or were in that moment. Yeah. Like you said, that the guy or gal that may have thrown a brick through a window. Like, you don't know where they were coming from, why that needed to happen for them. I mean, every action, there's a reason and a purpose behind it. And so I think, especially during these times when there are really big things occurring and really heartbreaking occurrences happening in the world, to understand that it's happening for a reason and a purpose, and that none of this is for nothing. There's so many beautiful golden moments that have come out of it, and that in and of itself, I think, lends to that collaborative, that cooperative, and that up-leveling sort of mindset that's prevalent right now. You know, could not have crafted this any.
No, like humans can't get together in a board meeting and craft this.
Yeah.
There is, what's interesting is when this happens, because now it's not just nation. Like, I've heard people write about this. A nation in war or a nation in happiness is a direct result of the common collective understanding. But now it's like, we're global with this. So we've gone beyond that point. And this is from a gentleman that was, died by 1912. And here we are now talking about the whole globe. And then we might even expand into the other entities that exist within our universe. But let's keep it globally, because that's what we're understanding now. But collectively, we are collaborating. But yet when we look what's going on, this is helping us to collaborate more. Even our enemies, we have to collaborate. And what we realize, competition is short-sighted. Collaboration is expansive. In order to compete with someone, I have to stay above them. But there's no expansion. I just need to stay 1 inch above them. But then I have to worry about them growing 1 inch, or someone else coming from the other side. So there's always constant setting of, I'm not good enough.
Right.
But when you're collaborating, like a guitar player can go off to a coffee shop and play by themselves. That's fine. It's great. Then in order to expand, they need a bass player, a drummer, a singer. Then they can collaborate and get onto a bigger stage and expand. It doesn't mean going back to the coffee shop is a deference or taking away from them. They have the ability, because a master has the ability to be alone and be in the field of collaboration, but they're not competing while they're at the coffee shop, nor are they competing when they're on stage with their band members. But it's expansive. We know the understanding of just a single guitar player in a coffee shop opposed to a whole ensemble on a stage with 30,000 people or so in the audience. It's expansive in a field of greater and less than, not better or worse.
Right.
When we become masters of this, we don't judge greater and less than or mathematical terms, period. I could find comfort in a basement, or I could find comfort on the rooftop of a tall building. And that's when we know one isn't better than the other. If I want to see the curvature of the city, the basement isn't going to do it. So then I choose the rooftop. But if I want peace and quiet and solitude, isn't it nice that I have the basement to go to?
Yeah.
But if you think I must keep going higher, how insane would that be? You can never go back to that peaceful place.
Exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
Very exhausting. And so this is kind of an odd segue into this next question, but I think a lot of us spend a great deal of time in our heads, in our minds, which is exhausting. Absolutely. I mean, I am a recovering overanalyzer. I do my best to get out of that space, but
so you're an OA?
Yes, exactly. So when I think about that overanalysis, I think about it being like my mind is in overdrive, okay? And there's the term mindful that gets bandied about quite often. And, when I think about the word mindful, because I have an understanding and a belief in what that word means, it doesn't feel heavy and it doesn't feel difficult. But there are other people that I've spoken with in the past, when you say mindful, they think of it as that overanalysis, that your mind is full of things and you really have a hard time, which of course, I think the true definition of the word is the polar opposite of that.
It is.
Would you mind sharing with the listeners as to what your definition or what your feelings are around that word mindful? What does it mean to you?
Mindful is a state in which you're in where you see how everything fits in. That's how I look at it. So in other words, and that's how life is about. Like my perception allows me to see things fit in, or my perception says what's going on and disturbance occurs. So, but when you're in that mindful state, you see how everything operates and fits in, because at some level, a corporeal self, what I call a physical self, isn't creating what's outside. It just has the ability to perceive. How it's conceived is how we feel from inside. So getting into that mindful state, no matter what happens, like take, for instance, coronavirus. By being mindful, I say, oh, this is how we're going to wake up. That's one way of looking at it. We come in collaboration, another way of looking at it. I don't have to work as much, another way of looking at it. But what I tend to do in a mindful state is choose a preferential, positive way of looking at it. When I'm not mindful, it tends to bog up my mind. And talk about mindfulness, because it is a paradoxical thing. But if you look at most spiritual, if you want to say religions or philosophies, they always started from a paradox. There's always a joke. Like in Buddhists, they say, have no desire. Now, it's kind of a joke, because to have no desire unto itself is a desire. And then once the master comes to the student and says, well, therefore go forth and accept that you have desire. But the desire no longer controls you. But if you're trying to get rid of desire, it becomes a desire. So mindfulness is a paradoxical, funny way of saying you have nothing going on. You're actually a blank slate. You're a computer with nothing, wiped clean, and able to take on a new perspective based on where I'm at.
So
yeah.
Well, so that being said, in times like this, or let's just fast forward a year from now, making assumptions that we will be in a new normal. How have you found that you've been able to navigate those times? So having a clean slate sounds awesome, but how do you get there? That's the big part of it. Like, how do you, what strategies do you implement to get through beyond overwhelm, confusion, high stress, especially in times of uncertainty, like now, for instance?
All right. So, okay, I'm going to go preface to my book now. So my book, Enjoy the Ride, I talk about the GPS, the internal guidance system for us, and the GPS, as we know, global positioning system. All right. So we all know how a global positioning system works. We're at a location. We want to get to another location, but don't know how to get there. But the GPS is a satellite up inside that can see everything. It could even see where you are and where you want to go to. So what happens is it triangulates the information, knows where you are, sends back to where you are, and then delivers bits of information at a time. So make a right, you make a right. Once you complete the right, you take the actual action on making the right. Then you're awarded the next bit of information, and so on and so forth. And then you make it to the destination. So going back to when Corona hit me, I've been implementing these things. So our internal guidance system is way more, a billionfold stronger than the GPS in which people trust every day in their car to get places. So the GPS is a mere fractal of how the human condition already exists. It's allowing us to move and understand us. So that's how I look at technology. I love technology because it shows us how we can advance into it. So that being said, once you come to an understanding, if I have an internal guidance system, it knows where I want to go. It knows where I want to get to. And if I just listen to the impulses and follow it, it will guide me to the center of the storm where the calm is. All right. Now the big thing is you need to know about this is how are you feeling when you're receiving information? Because if you're angry, you're getting an impulse coming through you that's broken up. So what is anger? Anger is a disconnection. So if I was talking to somebody on the phone and they're telling me vital information and I'm driving through the mountains and there's no cell tower, they're talking, but I'm not hearing because I'm broken up. So that would be anger. It's not that they didn't give me the right information. It's not that they weren't talking. The connection was broken. So when I'm in a state of anger, the connection from my higher self is always and forever coming through, but I am so distracted by the anger, I'm not hearing it, and I blow past the right-hand turn. But the beautiful thing is, even the GPS will never give up on you. Your higher self will never give up on you. So at some level, we came here to fulfill some type of journey. I call it the soul contract, kind of how like an actor comes into this world, into a set and says, okay, this is the theme I'm playing, but they still don't know how it's going to play out. They have to actually wait for the premiere to find that out, really. But when you actually stay calm and steady in that mindful state, when you trust that, you will know exactly what to do in the moment in which you're in. Just like the GPS says, make a right. But can you imagine I commanded the GPS to say, I need to know how many rights and lefts I'm going to make on this journey. I need it now. And it very well can do that, but it doesn't do me any good. If the GPS simply said, it'll take 50 rights and 30 lefts to get to where you're going to go, I'm like, okay. And then it shuts off. Where do I make the 30 rights and 30 lefts? In what order? Again, you only need one bit of information. Life is a scavenger hunt. And if you take each moment of bits of information as being present and fulfill it to the best that you can, you will then be rewarded the next bit and then the next bit and the next bit. And when you get to your destination, you realize the whole journey was the gift, including the destination and including the place in which you wanted to leave. It's all one complete kit. So it is about the destination starts the movement, the place in which you want to get out desires the destination, and then that starts the journey. And the better we are at connecting to our higher self, the more seamless we move. Now, I can talk about this because there are moments when I'm moving seamlessly, and there's moments I'm just erratic all over the road, like, but, right now when I'm driving on the freeway and I get distracted here, it reminds me to go to the center. So my frustration I use is that. It's a tool. It's not a curse. But just like means I need to get back from the center. So when I start getting frustrated, I'm like, whoa. I'm starting to think too much, over-processing, stuff like that. Get back to that place. And then all of a sudden, the cell tower comes in, I can hear it, and I move forward. But I get distracted a lot because I am a man. And
I don't even know. I don't think that's even gender specific. I think that
yeah. It's a human thing at this point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, a couple of things you mentioned too, soul contract, that, that was your terminology, but there's actually something, and it's part of what I do with my clients and for myself, is have an understanding of your soul contract, which is basically an analysis of your name, your birth name. And it shows you, who you are on a physical level, who you are on a spiritual level, what you're here to do, what your strengths are. I'm not going to say weaknesses because they're not weaknesses. They're just areas of yourself, of your soul that are looking to grow and expand further. Having a deeper understanding of that is super helpful. However, you were talking about, getting back to that center, the center of your lane, getting back to the center of you. What about those people who are constantly fast forwarding, who want to skip the turns 2 through 29 and get straight from turn 1 to 30 without the in between, or they feel that sense of imbalance and anxiety around not being at their final destination now? Do you have any thoughts or strategies or suggestions on how to continuously get yourself back into that place of radical acceptance of the moment, and how to not get lost in that, fast forwarding of life?
Yeah. Well, this happens a lot to me when I'm either doing a session individually or collectively in some of my guided meditations. People always seem that they're not where they're supposed to be. I'm like, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. I'm like, there is nowhere to get to. I'm like, time is a facet that we use to tell a linear story, but it doesn't really exist in the quantum world. But in order to tell a story, we create this movement of time, and And even movement from a film set is kind of 24 individual still shots moving, 24 of them moving in what we call a second to create movement. If it's slower, it looks warped. If it's faster, it looks like the chipmunks, if you will.
Right, right.
Yeah. But yeah, I would simply remind them you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're not looking at the windshield of your car to notice it. And that's just it. So you got to get them to that place. The nice thing about that, what we call negative type of behavior, it has an exhaustion factor to it. So eventually people like that will find themselves on their knees. And when they are, that's when they listen. That's when God, is what people say, come to them, you know? And a lot of times it takes that and then move on, but they don't trust it. Coming back to that multiple times. And that's why every day I have to reacclimate myself into this. Every morning I reacclimate myself into it. It's kind of like working out. I don't go to the gym once, I had a great workout, I am done. As long as it's physical. But no, it's every day I have to reacclimate. And every day when I reacclimate, I have to put a new perspective on it before I hit a plateau. Or when I hit the plateau, plateaus aren't bad. It's the only place you can actually build a house. But once you build a house and sitting down, drinking your lemonade in the backyard, you wander around like, how can I expand this thing? So plateaus are needed, but yet then the constant expansion begins. It's kind of a point of centering yourself. So and that's what I find out. I never go after people. And you probably find this too. When they're coming to me, saying these words, they can hear it. But when I see someone yelling at someone or whatever, I might do something to distract them to calm down. But me talking about your internal guidance system, you know, it can fall on deaf ears. And how do I know this? Because if someone said talked about this to me 30 years ago, I would have told them to get lost. Mm-hmm. So I want to award everyone the same respect. We all deserve our own way to get there. But when I find people that are entering into my world, they're already on the fence. And the truth is, I'm not telling them anything new. I'm just reminding them what they already knew. Right. That's all I am. I'm a mirror for people, and people are a mirror for me. So people are like, oh my God, my life changed once you mentioned that thing. I'm like, your life changed because of you. You're using me as your mirror, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what we do. But do not make me your guru. You are your own guru. The days of the guru of following someone around are done. For one, I wouldn't want anyone to follow me around. It's kind of creepy. But, leave me alone.
Right, exactly. I need some space. Give me some space.
Yeah.
But it is true. I think you're absolutely right. You know, the people that show up in your world are meant to be there for a reason. And, you know, the clients that come to me, they're ready, you know, they're ready to make a change. They're ready to tune back into themselves again. And it is them. They are the ones doing the work. I'm simply, like you, reminding them of what they know and holding space for them, you know, allowing them to trip and fall and dust themselves off. And I help pick them back up and get them back to their center, right their ship with them, you know, remind them again, give them tools and strategies of things that they can do, and then let them fly, let them soar and go out and do all of the beautiful things that they're here to do. It's just, I think we all get lost sometimes in the maze of our own mind and the expectations of others that are put upon us from a very young age that we carry around with us for decades upon decades.
And again, so I try to make that light. It's almost like a game that parents, at least my parents and other parents around growing up in like in the early 70s as I'm becoming a child, and they would have us do things that didn't really exist. And I think it was just so they didn't have to watch us. Like, go off and find a 4-leaf clover and do not come back till you find it. So you go off in the field, you look, and you come back, there aren't any. And it's like, yeah, of course, you know. It's this game they play, and this game creates awareness. It literally, the Zen masters will do that. They always shock their students. The student's looking this way, they'll tap them on the shoulder that way, and they'll keep doing it. And when they stop doing that is when the student doesn't turn. then they have to do something else. And the world is our Zen master. It's always shocking. COVID-19, well, how did you respond to it? Well, even the most spiritual person responded to it, may have looked, but they didn't freak out. They might have been like this. It's on this shoulder. Like when someone tapped me on my left shoulder and they were standing on the right, you were like this. But eventually, because if you did this, and they would tap you on this shoulder and be there, and eventually you just stop, like, I know what you're doing. And then you have to move on to another game. And that's how I look at life. I like to take it very light, very playful. And I play with people because I was taught to be, my dad played with me all the time. Like he would do stuff, not out of cruelty, but when I tell the story, like, that's cool. I'm like, no, that was his way of showing me he loved me, but another way of keeping me alert. You know, if I'm walking through the house, it's like, dude, in my head, he would throw a punch at my arm. Like, what the hell was that about? Or it got my attention. It took me out of this stupor, you know? And they're like, wait a minute, you know? And that's what I kind of like to offer for myself and other people. And when something like that happens, I laugh now. I enlighten myself with it. And that's where the word enlighten comes from. It means lighten up. It's nothing grander than that. So most spiritual, if not every spiritual person I know, at the root of who they are hysterical. They could be stand-up comedians, but I don't think they like the hours. You know? And that's how I approach life. And that's, you know, people that are around me, and I'm certainly the same way. There's humor in it, but it is. We always want to be placed in a situation that we've never seen before, but yet we know we can handle. Just like I call it the Navy SEALs of living. They train, but even the training, when they get dropped out of a helicopter and there's two of them in the middle of nowhere, there's something in them that says we can do this, but they have no idea. There's very little information about what's going on, such as life, but the experience provides it. But my higher self, if I stay calm, because you don't see a Navy SEAL all hysterical. No,
Right.
calm.
Right.
When they're calm, they're in this place of listening. How do they know to go to this side and know that, you know, it was their intuition and they listened. And when we do that, there's less carnage. Navy SEALs, when you look at them, their object is less carnage. Because if they wanted more carnage, they wouldn't need that. We'd just take a bomb and blow the whole place up. They want to have no carnage whatsoever. They want to get in, chip, chip, chip. It's like a game, chip, 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 and it's done. So the thing is, I look at life, and every human being that's on this planet right now is in the Navy SEALs of the universe. Because there are other entities looking at us saying, why would they choose a place with gravity pulling like that and spinning at 1,000? Like, why would they choose that? Well, why would someone choose to join the Navy SEALs? To truly see how powerful they are. And that's how I kind of look at life. So it lightens up. It makes me realize in any situation, I am prepared when I am calm and present. When I'm not in calm and present, I trip. But even when I trip, that could bring me back into presence and calmness. And that's the game. So these tripping and distraction now become focal points or getting me back. And just like on the freeway, when you hear digga, 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 it just means move to the center. I almost, thank God, some engineer put that there, because I would have been flipping in the car and that would have been the end of the ride. And that's what, so the engineer of who we are, call it God, placed all of these emotions. Love is the entity of all. There is no opposite of love. There's only a cutting down of love, which feels like an opposite. But then you take joy and sorrow. Well, sorrow shows you're off track. That's it. Get back here and you'll make it to joy. Happiness, anger, whatever. So these are dualities, but this isn't a punishment. This is, you know, just like digga, digga, digga isn't a punishment. It just showed you got distracted from what it is. You want the center lane in the road. That's it. When I start looking at emotions, because like, well, why would God give you a negative emotion? I'm like, well, when I came to learn, I'm like, it's not a negative emotion. It's like an alarm system. If you stay here, you'll move seamlessly in life. And that's what we call success. Success isn't the outcome. So success is the energy flowing through my system seamlessly, almost effortlessly. That's the feel of success. And because of that, the law of physics must produce something that's likable and awareness to others around us. The same physics goes in the other direction. You know, if you're doing 100 miles an hour in the direction which you want to go, or 100 miles an hour in the direction you don't want to go, you're still going 100 miles an hour. The results will be one's aggravating, one's joyful. So the physics doesn't discriminate, but understanding it tells you if you're feeling bad, your preferential is not being met. Just move over. If you're feeling good, no one ever questions feeling good.
Yeah.
You don't complain, oh, I felt good all day. Damn it, you know? And so people complain about not feeling good. So that really indicates that joy or feeling good is our natural state. Because when you're in a natural state, you don't complain, you keep going. When we start to understand these laws of physics within the world we live in, and physics starts with the way we feel, it then turns into physical matter, we start to understand, we know what they're there for, we know how to utilize them, we do better. So I'll never get angry or upset again ever and not know why. It doesn't mean I'll never get upset and angry. I got distracted. So once I understand that, it doesn't mean it'll never happen. I'm just no longer can blame the outside world. I can't blame the tree for jumping in front of my car anymore. I drove into the tree. The tree didn't jump out in front of my car. The person didn't upset me. The concept of that person, I had a belief, and they put it in front of me is what upset me. And why did I hold on to that? Well, that's on me, you know. So that's the moment in which I accept it. I accept the fact that I'm upset. And the moment I accept when I'm upset, I'm not as upset. Matter of fact, yeah.
Well, and that, you know, that reminds me of a concept in the Course in Miracles, and I'm not going to quote it, but the basic gist of it is you're never upset with the person or the situation that you think you are. It's never about the other person. Like you were mentioning before, you know, and I've talked about this myself, every relationship is a mirror. And if you feel something, if something is activated within you, whether it be anger or sadness or jealousy or rage or whatever it is, that's a deep wound within you.
Yeah.
There is a pain and a little piece of you that's hurting, and that's calling for attention. It's calling for nurturing. And, you know, it's my belief too, that we're all here on this earthly plane for the experience of being human. And the experience of being human is the gamut of emotions. So we're going to feel the really euphoric, blissful, joyful feelings of being in love, or, you know, being in the flow in the moment with something that we're doing, or being with people that we love, or whatever it is. But then we're also going to experience anxiety and stress because things are not going as we deem we'd like them to be going, or we lose a job or a loved one. You know, we're going to feel all the range of emotions. And we agreed to that before we showed up here.
Absolutely.
And that is the experience that we're having. And it is a roller coaster. I mean, there are the ups and downs. Doesn't mean they're good or bad. It's just, it is.
Yeah.
You know, and just to speak to and kind of bring us around to the masculine and feminine, which is also the duality of like the, you know, I agree with you in labeling emotions as negative because they're not negative. They're guideposts. They're showing us, expressing things to us, highlighting aspects of ourselves. With the masculine and feminine within each of us, but also in the world. We were talking about this before we started recording, about the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and the interplay within the world, within ourselves. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your kind of what you were talking with me earlier about that, the duality of the masculine and feminine?
Yeah, so most people now are coming to an understanding where the masculine, the feminine, the female, or the male is within each human being. That's why even like in the Bible, in the New Testament, when they talk about, even in the Old Testament, they talk about the male and the female. A lot of people take it literally, like the woman and the man, and the man's supposed to conduct the woman into doing stuff. And it's like, no. We all have an energy field within us, and the yin and the yang in certain places called, but the masculine and feminine. And I talk about this in the actually rooted into mindfulness. Mindfulness is understanding how they both operate and keeping them and seeing all at once. They actually support each other. But when you actually try to divide them, it's like dividing the heads of a tail of a quarter to make the quarter better. I'm like, you can't. The head supports the tail supports the head. But empirically, it's a quarter. We're a human being that has both masculine and feminine in it. So what is the masculine? What is the feminine? It's really an analogy I heard from somebody else. I twisted it around and made it into this form, but I can make a square or a rectangle, which is a physical world, which is the masculine of who we are. We outwardly do. That's the doing part of us and how I look at it. The feminine would be then the color. It would be, you know, say the color red or violet, whatever color you want to choose. It's the emotion, all right? Now, the thing is, a triangle can never produce red, but with red, I can produce a triangle. So within the field of feminine, when men get close to the feminine, they can actually produce more and get further and obviously collaborate with their inner feminine side. But because society over time says, oh, you need to be more masculine, you used to hide things in, they took the very essence that colorful is our life, because no thing will create any other thing, but the way I feel really creates physical matter. So my feelings, in this case, would represent the color violet. I can take a violet marker and make any shape out of it, but I can't take any shape and make a violet marker out of it. So everything stems from the feminine and then the doing. And that's one of the things I talk about. Get into the state and then doing will become easy. But people are trying to do stuff to get into that state. And this is where a lot of men over history, like, I went out and got her flowers. I got her a house. I'm working. I'm like, your doing isn't going to produce the feeling. It's going to muck it up. Get into the feeling state, and then the doing, like, you'll just naturally, if it's flowers, it's have a different meaning now. When you did things, it has a different meaning now. Get into the state in which you want to feel that feminine side of us, and then the doing will be seamless. There will be no contradiction to it. But men tend to want to do something to get somewhere. I'm like, no. Feel it. And when you feel good, it's tough not to do. You can't sit on the couch all day unless you're watching a really good documentary. You know what I'm saying? But when you get into that state, and that's what I call mindfulness, it generates a feeling, and then everything that's around you, you start doing based on the feeling. In other words, I don't make a right turn until the GPS says make a right turn. And then I do the right turn and it gets me. So, and when you look at a lot of the situations, like we talked about this earlier, throughout history, you know, recorded history, because there's been times where this didn't really exist. And we're seeing so many ancient recordings of that too. But men fell into the aspect of just doing, because what happens is, I always tell the story. When I was a child in that supreme state, you know, it's summertime, I ran out, 8 o'clock in the morning after eating breakfast, ran into the woods, not a nickel a dime on me, had fun, come back. And I knew everything would be supported. And then your parents, how was your day? My day was great. And then they asked the question, why was it great? What did you do? Well, I went to the woods and I climbed the tree. And then the kid goes, oh, it must be climbing the tree in the woods that make me happy. And then all innocence is lost. It's kind of like when Adam and Eve ate the apple. Because now I seek out the woods and the tree to find my happiness, and I end up chopping the tree down because it no longer does it. It wasn't the tree, it wasn't the woods. Because if someone lived in the desert, they were like, how can they not be happy? I mean, you know, they are. It was, I happened to be in the state of bliss. I just happened to climb the tree in order to explore the physical world. The tree wasn't the causation. It was just the representation of my expression. So there's always going to be a physical representation of expression. So passion is to be passionate over. I'm not passionate about writing. I'm not passionate about talking. I'm passionate about passion, but I tend to talk as an expression or passion about writing. So when I get into that state, which females tend to be already there, but because the masculine stifles it and is louder, it's like if you're in a meditation class, there's 1,000 people. It's just that one person that starts screaming that can disrupt the meditation. And why do we call this earth Mother Earth? Because all feminine energy is the only thing that can give birth to anything. It's not Father Earth, it's Mother Earth. It gives birth to it. So when men realize and start getting close to that feminine energy and stop trying to segregate it and separate, because when you segregate and separate yourself, you act erratic outside. You know, and then you blame everybody else. I'm like, no. Once we merge the two together, you understand there is a doing, which could look at as separate, but then there's a sense of intuition, a feeling, which creates a doing seamlessly. And then what happens, then you collaborate the two. It's the yin and the yang. You don't push them together like a green and a yellow clay and make a different color. They still stay separate, but they support each other. And they do that. And we're starting to see that now in society where women come and say, hey, we're no longer putting up with this. And what's going to happen is men are going to be like, oh my God, this works so much better. And it's not like, okay, just climb a tree, you'll be happy, and sit, I'm not happy yet. No. When you get to that state, climbing a tree, doing something for the one you love, whatever, becomes seamless and it becomes a joy. It's not like, oh shit, I gotta go get flowers at the store on the way home from work, and no, it's not like that. And that's kind of, we're starting to see that. There's disruption in it though. Because whenever you break something out of a shell, like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon, it can be very violent. But at the same time, we ought not to disrupt that, because if I went up to the cocoon and ripped it open, the butterfly would fall to the ground and die, because it needs that. So men right now are needing that to break loose. And women are now healing because of that. So it's a very interesting time. We're starting to see it. It's been coming for millennia. And now we're at this, what I call the golden age of it. But yet we're breaking through the cocoon. They can see the crack in it. Still got to push. You still got to do it. What does pushing in this case means? It means come centered. Own your feminine side as a male. And you start to see that. And then actually you start to see and understand other viewpoints, because that's what the feminine side does. It sees everything. This is why society typically always had women watch the children, because they wouldn't make it past the age of 2 if men were watching them. But yet, as we get there, all of a sudden you're starting to see men are capable of doing it. You're starting to see that. Why? Because they have the feminine energy. They can see it. It's like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. And the woman's like, how did you not know that was going to happen? Because they had this intuition. So as males, getting back to my astrology analogy with the shell and the softness inside, I might have lived multiple lifetimes as a barbarian, and now I came into this having that warrior attitude, but there's something in there that needs to be shined on more. And that was my intuition, my more feminine side. And because of that, I'm able to help so my audience would be people of that. And even a lot of my audience right now seems to be females trying to understand men and know that men have the capacity to do that. And they do. It's just they forgot it. Just like the tree makes me happy. No, the tree doesn't make you happy. You just happen to climb the tree. And when you actually look at it, what created the happiness? It was stillness. It was mindfulness. It was being present. Everything wipes away. And then once I become present, all of a sudden energy comes up, and then I want to go do something or create something, have a conversation, make a beautiful comment. Where did it come from? It came from inside. But once we find that still spot, and everyone knows where it is. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be trying to get there.
Right.
As we start to understand the physics of it, we find a way. So things like meditation are a good way. Empirically, there'll be a point where humans won't need to meditate. They'll be walking meditation. But the period in which we are right now, I do it every day. I do it a couple times a day. I teach it. But is it empirically necessary? And the answer is absolutely not. But at the same time, where we are right now, understand where you are on the journey. Like if I'm halfway between two spots, I have to understand that I'm in a car. Yes, I may need to stop and get gas. That's not a problem. But there is a moment in time when you won't have to, because there'll be electric cars that's moving and won't have to stop. But recognize where you are right now, accept where you are, and then the journey becomes easier and allows you to go in and then feel that feminine energy, which is love, which is excitement. And then the physical, the masculine energy is then the production of it, the doing of it, the representation of it. And that's how I sum it up from my perspective. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the balance of,
yeah,
of being and doing. You know,
yeah,
I mean, just to really distill it down and simplify it is just there are times when you just need to be, and there are times when you need to do. And
yeah,
I think that's within each of us, but also as a group, as a collective, you know, having the perspective shift that we were talking about at the beginning of the show, having that perspective shift, that different vantage point when it comes from both the feminine and the masculine. I mean, there are a lot more men who are coming into this understanding, who are embracing their feminine side, who are
yeah,
respectful of and appreciate the role women play in the world, and vice versa. However, there are also a lot of the masculine and the feminine on both sides, you know, whether you're a female and you are more of a masculine energy or a male with more of a feminine energy, coming into balance themselves, you know, bringing more of the masculine into the feminine and more of the feminine into the masculine, regardless of gender.
yeah. It
And
works both ways. Yes, yeah,
yeah. And I also really love what I'm beginning to see, and I think this period of time has been a great supporter of women coming together in a new way to support each other,
Mhm.
and men supporting their women in that process, which
Correct.
I think is such a beautiful thing. I started a group called the Sacred Sisterhood Movement, which is
Yeah,
really about women coming together in sisterhood, standing arm in arm and shoulder to shoulder to better the world, better ourselves, support each other while not excluding men. Even though it's called the Sacred Sisterhood Movement, it is bringing everyone together into a sacred family, if you will.
yeah. It does. Yeah,
Yeah, having men and women together, you know, because it takes, you know, women need a partner, and it doesn't have to be a man. It could be more of a masculine energy, and it works both ways.
yeah,
having having both in the mix, having both together within you and outside of you to propel us all forward, I think is such a beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be that competition, that contentiousness, the either or aspect. It's
yeah.
very much comprehensive and embracing of all viewpoints, of all people, and really just coming from that loving, supportive place, which I think is similar to what you were talking about as well.
Yeah, and that's because like earlier we mentioned about you know, if I just do a brief history of humanity over the last, just say, millennia, competition seemed to be a device people used to expand. And oddly enough, like the kid climbing the tree that was happy, they said, "What was a tree?" I'm like, no, it's a mistake. It's not. Competition is fragmented. It breaks apart. So, like you said, when women go off and do their thing together, where they have the march on Washington or whatever, I remember when that was happening, somebody says, "Oh, what's going on?" I'm like, why does it bother you? It's not a competition. Like they're not competing against us. They're trying to regather, reconnect with their energy. So, and the energy, the feminine energy, is what actually keeps this world spinning. So, yes, a man have the ability to tap into that, as we're coming to see that now. But in the past, men had a tougher time. They refused to tap into it.
Mm-hmm.
But collaboration is the only thing that will continue expansion. Competition is fragmented. It breaks apart. So as we start to understand the physics of it, competition will never disappear, but it'll be fruitless. So again, the tricycle for the grown-up will never disappear. It's just no longer needed for the fulfillment of the journey which they're taking. But you don't knock it, but it's no longer needed. It's kind of like that baton's been halved off. Because we live in a universe that's inclusive only. So trying to get rid of something, again, that's why women aren't against men or the masculine, because the seesaw would be like this. We're doing this game, but so far it's been like this: masculine, feminine up here, they can't budge. But when we actually start to balance, both parties start to see the fluidity of life, and that's what we want. And the first sign of life is what I'm doing right now. It's a wave. Crest and a trough, or what, examine. But once that moves, it keep moving. Feminine and the masculine, if they do not keep in unison, there is no life whatsoever. And that's why life is rocky. It didn't go disappear. They've been competing, banging up against each other. So it's like a seesaw, like bam, bam. And then when you get good at it, you realize, oh my God, there's no banging, there's no shoveling, right? Then the people on the seesaw love the ride. But the clunkiness of it wants you to get off of it. And that's the misunderstanding of the physics of the feminine and masculine. It isn't a competition. Women are trying to regain their composure. And when they regain their composure, the whole world regains their composure, because that feminine energy creates the doing. The doing does not create the feminine energy. It creates the masculine energy to do. So that's why it's called Mother Earth. Women give birth to life. And we try to no, yes, start in with that feminine place, whether you're male or female, and then do the doing. And you need both sides.
Yeah. You absolutely do. Yeah, you absolutely do. You mentioned meditation a few minutes ago, which kind of leads me to our closing question about rituals that you might have. And I'm making a big assumption, assuming meditation is one of those, where you're able to tune into your soul's voice, when your soul can speak to you, when it's, online, quote unquote, if you will. What do you have in your toolbox to help you tune into that part of you?
Yeah, I have a multitude of things. Obviously meditation. And right now, as I do it, I typically wake up in the morning, scurry around, get some water, a couple of things in the morning. And then I sit and meditate. Every day's slightly different. I like to do a quiet meditation, maybe a silent mantra. And it allows thoughts to come in. And we have no control of a thought, but we have the ability to let them go by.
Right.
So even if it's a thought that could, the next chapter of my book, I simply let it go by. I don't grab it, because I'm in this state right now with myself. Also, to my kind of what I do every day is I look at life as my skill or my way of getting through it. Everyday stuff should be that thing that grows our spirituality. Like the meditation is just a neutrality place to generate the energy, But yet my everyday existence, whether I'm running into somebody at the store or dealing with somebody, that is my ritual. My everyday life is my ritual. There is no ritual then life. I don't separate the two. There are times when I forget and they become separate, but then the dig or the anxiety or the thing brings you back to I ought not to separate this, because this is my place in which I do it. And that's what martial arts, it's simply moving meditation. So meditation is like the practice you do in front of the mirror, and then you walk out into the world, and then you actually utilize that practice. So they go hand in hand. And that's why I love meditation equally. So I remember one time years ago, I tried to meditate for the whole day. And 20 minutes into the meditation, I got to this really heightened state, and I wanted to go do something. And it was something, and I was like, no, wait a minute, I have to meditate all day. And I'm like, well, that was fruitless. I just left. So the whole day meditation didn't exist, but yet I did. I continued, because what I did, because that meditation helped other people, helped myself. it perpetuated these good feeling things. And for me, it just happened to take 20 minutes, not 24 hours. I don't know why. I'm thinking if I meditate all day, I'll be a supreme being. I'm like, no, that's not true. There are times when I find myself in a meditation state for a rather long time, but I didn't start out saying I must do this. I don't make it a chore.
Right.
It's like, you're waking up. If you like coffee, wake up in the morning, grabbing the coffee. That should be meditation. But if you have to do it, it's, sometimes you might have to do it just to experience it. But if you have to do it, it's all lost. You want to.
Yeah, it's a beautiful distinction you made about, yes, a sitting meditation practice or a walking meditation practice or whatever you prefer is a beautiful thing. It's part of it, but living your day-to-day life is also a ritual. Yeah. It's also a place of opportunity and learning and that ability to go within, even with others, oftentimes due to an interaction or engagement with another person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is. And that's the meditation sets you up. So that would be like the feminine energy. And then the doing then represents, and then it keeps. So once something physically happens, the reason it can reflect joy back is it helps perpetuate. But it isn't the causation. So for the child, the tree perpetuated. But if you had energy and you had no way to express it, it would die down. So you want to express the energy, however way. And expressive energy perpetuates the energy. It's a reciprocal thing. That's what happens. So, and then if we get sidetracked a couple times during the day, we get tired, and then we go to sleep at night. They say at some point humans or, human beings won't have to sleep. They'll be able to keep going. But it doesn't mean sleep is bad, because where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. We don't know enough to say, oh, if I'm only using 10% of my DNA, which, they say there's 90 other percent, I'm like, if 10% is all you're using, that's all you're supposed to be using.
Yeah. That, and I think that's a beautiful piece for everyone to remember. And
there is no other place to be than now and here. And there'll be other expansive heres and nows. It's just like if I'm at Disneyland, I'm fully well aware there's Adventureland, there's other amusement parks, but I don't sit there and think about other amusement parks when I'm at Disneyland. I stay in Disneyland. And when that park closes the next day, I'll look into other ones. And that's the life we're in. You're here now for a reason. Yes, it's nice to know there is a future when there won't be any competition. But right now it's teaching me something. It's teaching us something. So I don't devalue it. I just understand it deeper than I did before. And I also understand collaboration is more expansive. But I don't knock it because it served a purpose. And until we get to this point, we start to see, and then there's always another aha moment. It never ends. Aha moments never end. That's the beauty of life.
Yeah. Well, I think the overarching takeaway for me is we're right where we need to be.
Exactly.
Right now. That's it. Yeah. So thank you, Frank, very much for
having me. I appreciate this. It was fun.
Yeah, and having a captivating conversation. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. If you would like to learn more about Frank, his weekly meditation workshops, his book, Enjoy the Ride, is available on Amazon. He has another book called Strong Island coming out very soon. Follow him on Instagram at Frank Daly. So it's pretty straightforward and simple.
Yeah.
If you're interested in connecting with him, you can also email him at frankdaly1967@gmail.
Correct.
Okay, at gmail.com. So so that is a wrap for today. Again, thank you, Frank. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of SoulFull Sessions.
Right. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye.